Hey, you wrapped up the series, and the one thing that stuck out to me the most, because I had never heard it before, you put up on the screen, boundary marker spirituality. And I had never heard that before, but I kind of liked what you were saying. Talk a little bit about that for people who, if they weren't in the message, talk a little bit about what that is.
Right, and honestly, I don't know if I actually did a really good job explaining it, but basically this was a concept that I came across. It was in a book written by John Ortberg that talked about how by the time of the first century, when Jesus walks on the scene, the rabbis and the teachers of the law and all the religious elite, the leaders, they were so focused primarily on the outward appearance of things, as in circumcision, dietary laws, and Sabbath keeping. Yeah. It was almost like they didn't care about anything else or the heart, where people's heart were with God. I mean, they lost sight of the fact that all the Ten Commandments really drive home to this one point where it's to understand that God is one, and we are to worship Him and make Him first in our life. But they were so focused on the appearance of spirituality that they lost sight of the inward work, which is what spirituality really is the inward work from the outside. And
so what are these markers then? It was almost like they were saying, it's not about my relationship with God anymore, it's about I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. Is that kind of what you're...
Absolutely, because you could see if you were Jewish or not based on if you kept the Sabbath and if you did the dietary laws. So there was a way to distinguish between the pagans in the world and the Jewish people, and so they wanted to make sure to be distinctive, but yet in the striving for that distinctive and striving for that, they found themselves really more of an outward appearance, and it was all about if you looked spiritual, if you fell within the guidelines, and not really ever dealing with the heart. And that's where Jesus came in. He started dealing with the heart. And the religious leaders kept saying, well, why are your disciples eating on the Sabbath? And they're picking heads of grain.
Because they cared about these boundary markers and not the heart issue.
Solely focused on the outward appearance.
Now, when you were talking, I started thinking, I'm like, I feel like I've fallen into that a little bit in different seasons of my life where I'm like, all right, am I doing the things? It's almost like it becomes my relationship with God. Why is it so easy for us, even though we're not a part of ancient Judaism, it's still so easy, even though Jesus came and it's just about believing, He wants to work in our heart, it feels so easy to just fall into boundary marker spirituality. Is that something?
Right. I think we still as Christians struggle in this, and I'm with you, that it's easier to kind of boil everything down to a checklist. Yeah. If I read the Bible this many days in a week, if I go to church, I think church attendance can also be considered boundary marker spirituality if we're not careful. That you see me at church, then everything's okay. But you never really know what's going on in someone's heart. Yeah. Just because they come to church doesn't mean everything's working out, or that they're allowing God to work out everything that they want Him to touch in their life. And so there's so many different areas where we sometimes as Christians will set up camp and say, as long as you're doing these things, then you're good to go. And it's really not about we really started focusing on the appearance of spirituality instead of really looking at people's heart.
Oh, I love what you say. You're like, hey, brother, how's it going? God is good. I'm too blessed to be stressed. It's like you create this fake thing, and I'm doing good. That's awesome. The other thing I loved was when you talked about peaks and valleys in our relationship with God.
Right.
My question is, as we're trying to go deeper, do you feel like you grow more in the peaks or the valleys when it comes to your relationship?
It's interesting. I didn't really get a chance to go into this. I just kind of touched on it a little bit, but I said basically that you can grow in both peaks and valleys. But I think it's so easy for everyone to say that they grow in the valleys because they're desperate for God in those moments. They can't think of anything else to turn to, and so they turn to God. And so by turning to God, it's almost they feel like they're growing in their faith. And it's true, you do. Yeah. But I feel like we're missing opportunities to grow in the peaks. Because when we get to the peaks of our relationship with God and we feel His presence and it seems like everything's moving and going, I think we take the gas off.
Yeah.
I think we start coasting. We start, kind of relaxing. And I feel like we miss opportunities to really grow in our faith in the peaks because our foot's off the gas and we put it on cruise control and we're just kind of waiting this thing out.
Things are easier. They are smoother. We don't lean into it. Oh, that's a good thought.
Right.
Man, that's great. All right. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for hanging out with us.
No problem.
I'm looking forward to this again.